good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and even wherever you happen to be watching or listening to this podcast. I'm Dr. Matt Stranick. We're at episode number 14 of this Ed Non-Tech podcast. This would not be possible without my excellent colleague over here.
Thanks, and it wouldn't be possible without you. I'm Dr. Doug Reed, and I'm coming to you from Mi'kmaq, the traditional homes of the Mi'kmaq peoples.
And similarly, Doug, I am, it's similarly and yet on the other side of the vast North American continent. I'm here in Kamloops, British Columbia, which is to say within Secwepemcúlecw, the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwepemc people, where teaching and learning have taken place since time immemorial. As always, really grateful and in various ways throughout the day and while I'm here, I'm just really grateful. So Doug, how was the holiday? Before we dive in, we are in the post-holiday period now, which can be kind of tough for some people,
Yep.
People who overspend on Christmas. I will never be one of those people, FYI. And things like that. So, overall, Doug, we had our episode, right? The last one, right at the New Year time. How was the holiday period for you as a whole, and how are you getting back into real life?
I sat at my front door just waiting for your present to come in the mail, and it hasn't arrived yet. That's a joke. I did not.
My presence is your present. Okay.
Oh.
So, whoa.
You language people are so good with the words.
Well, it's like, how you overcompensate sometimes in one area to kind of make up for, maybe say gross deficiencies in others. That's kind of been my story with language mostly throughout my life, I got to say. Make of that what you will. I think that's anybody who knows me probably wouldn't disagree, right? So, man. Well, I had a great holiday. Okay, I'm just going to say I've come through kind of a turbulent 2021 and 2022 combined, if you will. Really,
yeah,
since COVID shut the world down, actually, I really kind of was on a bit of a roller coaster in various ways, but it kind of wound down nicely at the end of last year. So
right on.
Yeah, man.
Right on. And I think you're underselling it. I think you've been through the wars.
Okay. So like, I'm somebody who's deliberately reading books on stoicism and
yes.
things like that. I'm just like, yes. It really, in as much as I don't want to say like it's all about the positive thinking, because that's utter horseshit. But nevertheless, the notion that if you sort of have certain habits of mind and are present in a certain way that is accessible to normal people. Doug, I'm going to be way interested to hear sometime about your meditation certified practice and the journey that led you there, because that's kind of that's the vibe that I'm on for 2023. But I seriously am rambling here, dude. More so than probably is warranted. So. Pedagogy of abundance is what we're talking about. So we kind of did our, end of year abundance kind of thing with the presents, and we probably ate more than we meant to and drank more than we meant to, knowing that we would, of course, right? So we're coming out of this abundant kind of period at the end of the season and into the new one. So I thought this was really timely. Thematically, and in addition to just strictly the fact that this is an important concept. It's been brought up in EdTech by Dave Cormier, among others, and we talked about it on the show. So it's sort of like two birds with one rock being murdered here, Doug. I'm impressed. So besides what I just kind of glossed over there, Do you want to just speak to why the interest now, particularly, or?
Yeah, I'm going to 100% blame you because you brought it up in two different episodes of the podcast, and I'm like, damn, I don't have enough to contribute. I got to go read about this. So
Well,
you
dude,
forced me to
yeah.
go read. So it
Well,
was a good thing.
I'm somebody who really likes a good catchphrase. I got to tell you, like, I mean, I've literally got, catchphrases like on my body, right? Like, this is again my bent as an English major, and it's hopefully something that can be helpful to discussions, right, rather than unhelpful. So like it's like pedagogy of abundance, just like ding ding ding. It's like I haven't read a bunch about it, but I know that's a thing, and I can point to a couple of things about it. So now it's kind of boomeranging back at me, like, okay, my excellent colleague has both proposed the topic to further his own learning, and in so doing is given me some excellent resources here, which I haven't, necessarily encountered. So that's for me a
So,
bonus there, but yeah.
and I'm hoping you can take it away. Can because you've got way more experience with it than I do. Like I have a couple of weeks worth.
Well,
and
okay,
you're
so
the one that at least knew the catchphrase to say
well,
it.
in as much as I've come to understand it, right? It's about okay, so first of all, I'm just going to back it up, and I'm just going to just say now that I've been reading Pedagogy of the Heart, Paulo Freire, which arrived. That was just something, that came from our conversations on this show. And I'm like, okay, well, I could just order this on Amazon, right? And this is actually from 2021. But, I meant to sort of tear into very much of the book in advance of our conversation. But what's interesting is I kept getting stuck on the introduction. The introduction is by this person who's named Antonia Darder, and I've looked her up a bit, and she is an amazing scholar in her own right. She works, in the United States, and her critique about, because Freire passed away back in the 1990s, so the purpose of her introduction is to sort of talk about what the message in these final writings are vis-a-vis, common and current themes. Like she talks about coronavirus, and there's this amazing little part of it. I think anybody who's in ed tech just needs to read the introduction to this book, and particularly the part about virtual learning, because I think it sort of speaks to just some of the things we've been talking about. So now, because what I would have said a week ago about Pedagogy of Abundance is different now than I've read this, because it's had a pretty profound effect on me. And I'm looking at abundance now as being synonymous, or at least in line with maybe a banking model of education, which, again, knowledge as being a tacit good currency, if you will, an exchangeable thing, as opposed to what Darder, and what I, and when I get into the Freire aspects of it, the actual text, it's sort of like he's sort of arguing for a more democratized approach to it than that, as in, and like we talked about on this show, knowledge is a public good, and we all have a responsibility within our ways, within our capabilities, to work together, like in a certain kind of unified kind of way, to help remove inequity, right? And in this case, so you can take that, it's a very far left position, but I fail to see anything about it that I disagree with yet. So there, Doug, I completely took this away from where I was going to go with it before I did this reading, and now I hope that was helpful in some way, Doug. Honestly.
Oh yeah, I like the organic nature, and
yes,
the fact that you're so open-minded because you had your thoughts, you found some new stuff, and you changed your thoughts. That seems healthy and open.
Well, I mean, again, okay, so organic, that's a good word, because again, what I sort of see coming out with the show is that we do in sort of the language that we've been using, the metaphors, the allegories, the things we kind of keep touching back to. We kind of, keep kind of reaching for kind of language from and of nature a bit, right? And I think a lot of, the power of an educational message is in how well it's communicated. And again, allegory, anecdote, things like that are hopefully going to be helpful to the deal rather than otherwise.
Oh, yeah. It's sometimes people can't get the concept, so you give it to them a different way, and it's like, oh, it's like that. And it's like, yeah, that's the relationships of things matter so much.
A holistic context, if you will. And again, I think that's something
Yeah.
that speaks to some of the, indigenous and indigenizing perspectives that hopefully, we're going to keep raising and cultivating in this show and through, other aspects of our educational practice. Before I start actually speaking to some of these references, was it a drag getting back into the office, or are you okay with it now, dude? I got to ask.
Oh, at about
As somebody who
2 o'clock
doesn't
on
have
the
an
first
office to
day.
go to right now, was it okay?
At 2 o'clock or 2:30, actually, on the first day back, I just got this wicked headache. And it just didn't go away until I went to bed and
Go
slept.
figure.
Yeah, it's just, oh. The next day I was fine. The next day was okay. I was
back to your
into it.
usual self, yeah. But
Yeah.
man, I don't know. I don't want to say I've got a line on a job because I don't necessarily. But now people in HR departments are getting back into the office, and
Wicked. That's a good sign.
I've got like 3 pretty real conversations about stuff that's coming up within the next 3 or 4 days, and then I have kind of an even further entrenched, I guess, proposition coming up in a couple of weeks, which means, something that would potentially mean moving out of the province, which I really don't want to do. But, if the opportunity was of such magnitude, not to turn it down would be silly, right? So, yeah, you're in an office, and I'm imagining being in an office.
Yeah, and that's part of why it wasn't so bad, even with the headache. Because it's like, yeah, this is what I want, right? I want to be I want to be working with other people, and I want to be helping people.
You intentionally have steered yourself towards this, right? Throughout your career, through your thoughts and your actions. Okay. So one thing, that I just got as sort of this notion from the Stoic book, The Lives of the Stoics, that I read, is this whole, there's all the history aspect of it. Man, the Roman Empire was fucked. Like, it was so.
Yeah, thank you for the news flash. Yeah,
I know, but like, I don't like read history or have familiarity. It's like there was a Roman Empire, but like if you actually look at like some of the details of it, it was insane, just bonkers nuts. But anyway, among the concepts of the Stoicism that I kind of, it resonates, is you become what you think, right? Eventually, you turn literally into what you think of and imagine and spend your interior life, and eventually, in some way or other, the outward manifestation is going to align with the inward manifestation, right? And if you can sort of build it up intentionally and with good habits and whatnot, then you can achieve maybe a richer inner and outer life than you might have done otherwise. Speaking to a notion of abundance. So you got some awesome references here, dude. Pedagogy of abundance. How is technology impacting this concept? And the first one here, it's kind of an older reference, but I think it's good. Boyer, 1990. The work of the professor becomes consequential only as it is understood by others, yet teaching is often reviewed as a routine function. Yes, it is undervalued as labor, for sure.
Oh yeah, it's just added on because it is. We talked about the reward structure in post-secondary before, but the reason I picked that is it ties nicely to the fourth reference that we'll get to when we get to. But I pulled it right out of the Wettler article. Pedagogy of Abundance, the 2011 article.
That,
He
my
quotes
friend,
it.
that my friend is that I saw that and I'm like, okay, and then you have this friggin' awesome sort of dialectical chart here, education versus the everyday.
Mm-hmm.
So apart from the fact that you've got a really salient, excellent Weller reference, Martin Weller, if you're listening, we're fans. We really like your stuff. Anywho, but do you want to speak to this, what I consider a pretty awesome, that table chart thing you got there, dude?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
Ungerer in 2016 did something about digital curation as a core competency. And they talk about, here's what education is right now, right? It's analog, it's tethered, it's isolated, it's generic. They're about being consumers. It's a closed system. And then the rest of our lives have moved past. The rest of our lives have become digital, mobile, connected, and personal, and creative, and open. And looking at those two dichotomies, it's like, holy smokes, that's an issue. Why are we there? How did we get there? Right? Like,
so the gap is so wide between the two is sort of what I hear you saying there, bud. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a huge gap. How did we get there? And I think the pedagogy of abundance has a lot to do with it, and the structures and the philosophies of education and how the school systems have been working.
So, as I understand it, the pedagogy of abundance sort of is tethered on a notion that information, knowledge is just, or however you want to talk about it, is just so ubiquitous vis-a-vis open, or rather online systems and networks. So the notion then becomes, how do you not only just sort of navigate that and sort of do your sort of wayfinding and sense making within that context, but further, how ideally, I suppose, can you actually leverage the dynamicism of the fact that there is, at this point in history, more information than there ever existed before, and every day it's just growing, more so. So how can you take that dynamic growth, that dynamicism of an exponentially expanding internet, and take that within an educational context and really use it to its full advantage? That's kind of like, it's like the difference between just kind of making do with something and kind of adapting, or having a pathway to actually succeeding, based on the affordances of the situation. Is that just like crazy talk, or that I just rambled at you there, dude? Or is like that?
No. You made a lot of sense. And what I want to do is I want to hammer away on the culture a little bit.
Okay.
Because if you take a look at what schools really are, right? They're places that we put students so that their parents could go to work 190 years ago, right? That's how it was designed. So it's about authority, right? Good information comes from the authority, right? Follow the authority. You better follow along with what that teacher's doing, right? So, it's take a look at elementary schools. In elementary schools, girls are good because they listen and they follow along, and boys are bad because they're out of control and they're rambunctious, right? And I'm overgeneralizing like crazy, but that's the structure that is slowing down education being able to move, because there's still the authority piece there. And in everyday life, do we still have that authority piece? I went to Google Scholar and I just typed in education and it was over 8 million articles. It's like, I can't read 8 million. I'm not even interested in reading a fraction of that. But it's, how do we move authority from where it was in K-12 to where the rest of our lives are right now?
Okay, so I think authority is kind of an interesting concept, and I want to just make sure I understand how you're using it so I can, respond. So, in as much as authority is in a power dynamic, right? As
Yeah.
in, I have authority over, my own actions, or my boss may have some authority over or responsibility for my thing, or there's authority as in as much as, this person's knowledgeable, this person's an authority, he's a SME, right? He's a SME, he's an
Yeah.
authority, an authoritative SME. So
So
how are
subject
you?
matter expert, right? Not
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
creature from How the Grinch Stole Christmas or something.
You can choose your own adventure with that one, Doug.
Okay, that's
Uh,
fine. I like choose my own adventure.
yeah. But so I guess how did you mean it there when you're talking about what you were just talking about there?
I'm talking about the struggle, like to get to the pedagogy of abundance. It's
Yep,
like information literacy. It's
yep,
how do we find out the good stuff?
right.
Because 30, 40, 80 years ago, the teacher told you what the good stuff was because that's all you had access to. They gave you that textbook and that
Oh
was it.
yeah,
That's all you had.
it's the flattened classroom, right? That's
Yeah,
the challenge. It's the challenge of the
that's
flattened classroom where not only are students accustomed to being de facto recipients and consumers of certain kinds of media content, they have, I think, perhaps not even an unrealistic expectation that schooling sort of is reflective of that. So then it's like, is it a matter that we're in a tech-centered society, an era that the education is obliged to keep up, or are we inadvertently teaching in ways within our schools from sort of disposed positions that are causing humans to graduate from that, who are then creating systems which entrench and reinforce, existing power structures in society. Um, that's this is the free air, introduction that's kind of starting to come out at me. I just
what
yeah. Anyway,
information used to be the most valuable thing,
right.
right? It used to be you'd walk into people's houses to look at my books, right? And they'd show off all their books and they'd have bookshelves and bookshelves. Oh,
Right
don't
on.
worry, I want to see them. You can't zoom in enough for me. I definitely want to see those. But it used to be books, and now there's so much information out there that's readily available, and now it's about
Taking a
choosing
sip.
the right choosing the right stuff.
Well, otherwise, I think we've used this metaphor before. It's trying to drink from a fire hydrant, like
Yeah,
or whatever, right? Like just um yeah, no, so and no, it's so I'm really glad that you've circled back on this concept for the show, because I think there is something about it that is worth speaking to in as much as we can within our sort of own little format here and within our own respective practices and experiences. And again, I do like how it ties into the curation aspect that you've included in the notes, and as we've talked about variously on the show before. So not only sense making, not only having the skill set to access the information, b figure out what's better with a critical sensibility. So this is why I don't understand, like, can I just say, why don't
sure.
we have a few more prereqs to entry to university study? Or like when you're in your program, like maybe you got to have like just, you know, digital and information literacy 101 in your first semester or within your first, 2 semesters. And while you're at it, throw in an indigenous knowledge class, because why the hell not? Just put a couple of blocks in the curriculum that are devoted to shoring up obvious deficiencies within our thing. Is that ridiculous and overly prescriptive, dude, or what?
Come move to this island. That you just described exactly what they're doing here. Like literally,
Prince Edward Island is the island in
Yeah.
question for those who may be
like
joining us
there's
mid-episode.
there's one institution here that just implemented a new. Everybody has to take this course about Indigenous history and realities in Canada. Every
Good.
program. You can't
Good.
graduate without this program. And another institution, first semester, you have to take a course about how to use a computer. And you have to take a course about language, normally English, because that's what everything is at the institution. But
I know we do our best to like avoid naming names on the show. Largely, my former employer perhaps excluded. My most recent employer.
Our former.
I don't want to contaminate you with that, because my thing is way more bizarre. But what you've just caused me to do is like, I'm going to do some Googling on post-secondary and VEI. Because what you just told me sounds friggin' awesome, man. Okay, well, never mind. My recommendation's already being met. Just copy and paste whatever these folks are doing, right? That's
but it's
okay.
It's a new version of what we had to do before. Like with my arts degree, right? Like, you got the list of requirements. You got to have one science. You got to have an English. You got to have a whatever, right? They had that list. You had to have like an economics or classics course or whatever the breakdown was. And so they were trying to round it out. And when I was doing my undergrad studies, information was so important. And I learned a bunch, but I learned more outside of class than I did inside of class. Because
as we know from Bloom's taxonomy, shout out to Bloom's taxonomy, knowledge acquisition and regurgitation, if you will, tend to fall on the bottommost levels of the taxonomy.
Yeah.
So I mean, in those antiquated times, in the days of yore, maybe there was an overload on the basic aspects of Bloom's, for instance, and rather less for the upper levels. So creation, analysis, synthesis, not in that order, but thereabouts, right? Those higher level kind of functions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're bang on, right? It's like Bloom has 6 levels, right? And anything below level 3 is like, give me a break. If I want students to regurgitate information, then I'll get them to do that. But I don't. I want them to think and I want them to learn. Like when I'm teaching, like every semester when I start a class, the kids always want to know about their grades. Right? How are we getting marks? So I'll jump through all those hoops and explain it. And then I'll say, I do not care what grade you get. I care that you learn. And most of them have no clue how to handle that. And I find out later, right? Like, and it comes out in dribs and drabs that they were freaked out by that, but they understood it because of my philosophy.
It's good that you're consistent. And they're lucky that you that they encountered you at a point in your career where you would both reach that point and where you were comfortable explaining that to them in such a way that could be a learning moment in and of itself, right? Learning to learn.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of a cliche. I know it's kind of hackneyed, but I mean, man, we need so much more of that. And I think the nature of online learning is such that we almost have a responsibility within our area to kind of advocate for that and show by example as much as we can. So just one quick side, John, based on just what I was thinking while you were describing, because you were raising some excellent points and bringing it back to Bloom's. Okay, so if we're talking about, knowledge, regurgitation and whatnot, if you were to think of like a test format, an exam format, if you wanted to align with lower level skills, then probably what you'd be doing is what? Setting up multiple choice questions? Is that fair to say, more or less, Doug? Like, how do you feel about
first,
multiple choice questions?
I hate
No.
exams.
So I'm going at a further roundabout point here. You're the wrong person to
Okay.
ask. Okay, but can you agree on a point of principle that multiple choice questions are, as per Bloom's, lower than higher on the tax fund? Okay.
Yeah.
So then we're talking about learning management systems, right? We're talking about technology.
Oh, are we? Okay.
We are. I'm bringing it to that to make it relevant because I think it's relevant. I think there's a point to be made. I can be told otherwise. But so when you're, the first thing, a lot of, based on my experience helping people with LMS is rightfully, how do I get my tests on here? And then you're not thinking of what's a good piece of evaluation. You're thinking, what is a effective way to grade as many things by as many people as possible? And if you're talking about a pedagogical strategy that's available through all the LMS, I don't care which one it is, D2L, Moodle, whatever. Whatever they are, whatever you happen to use, you go into your test setup area and test question types. And I mean, it kind of encourages you to use the ones that are going to mark themselves automatically, right? So therefore, again, you're sort of adjusting your evaluation, not to sort of say what's going to be the most effective teaching and evaluation and assessment approach. You're thinking, what can I get into the LMS to mark, 150 multiple choice exams so I don't have to mark them because I got way more people crammed into my class than I should, and technology is kind of assisting with it and in fact encouraging, by making it so easy to make the lower stuff so readily available. And again, I'm just got this on the tip of my mind because this whole section by my colleague here, no, she's not my colleague, but this person who I have a pretty high opinion of now, Darter, in the virtual learning and technology section. Like, I've got it all marked up. So again, I don't even know if that's relevant or salient to what we were sort of talking there about. I think I kind of ran sideways with it there, but
that's okay. So we go sideways.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
Well, fair enough. So thank you, Ungerer. Now we got Little John and McGill here for 2016. There is a danger in narrowly viewing learning as the acquisition of resources. Love it, love it, love it. I won't read the whole thing, but that's dope, man.
Well, growing up, you must have had those teachers that they had their resources and they taught right out of the book. I don't mean to pick on math profs, but I worked at a place and we were talking. I was trying to help some math profs get their stuff ready, and they're like, "Oh no, I used that book," and I'm like, "So what do they need you for?" You're like, "What do you mean?" And it's like, "Well, if it's all in the book, what's the point of you, right? What's your pedagogy? Why are we paying for you if we could just get them to walk through the book and we can hire a teaching assistant?" Like, and they hated that. And it's like, but it's about scarcity. Universities are about scarcity, right? Because it's like, oh, the top minds are there teaching. And so I want to go there to learn because I'm going to be taught by the top people. And then the publishing industry got involved. And now the top people would write a book. And then everybody uses that book. So we don't have to talk to you anymore because we already got your knowledge. Your knowledge is in that book. So how that's separate. That's the first separation. And now not even the top people are writing books. Everybody and their dog can write a book. And you can put it into that new AI, whatever, chat GPT or whatever. That's the latest buzzword stuff. It's like, so now you don't even need you at all, right? People can put the right codes in and the computer will go look and do that. And what is the point of the scarcity, right? Where are we headed with that? Because we had an abundance model. We have an abundance model now, but the pedagogy hasn't changed. So what do we have to do to make the professors or make the teachers important enough that they matter again?
Well, so first of all, that's an awesome point right there. You know, we have an abundance model, but there's a teaching approach, you know, a paradigm that hasn't caught up.
Mm-hmm.
That is an excellent point, which I wholeheartedly agree with, I think, without thinking too hard about it.
I love when you agree with me.
But I guess the other aspect is, again, we have to kind of look at colleagues who are outside the field of outside the field of education, right? Because like the business of education is to know about knowing, right? And to help people with that as much as you can. And again, for somebody who's been hired to teach, say, nuclear physics or geology or French language or whatever, I mean, that's what they've committed themselves to. So within the teaching and learning game, or the faculty development game, or the faculty support, or all the myriad types of configurations and roles that, you know, people like us, you know, occupy or have occupied, instructional designer in some cases. I mean, I think people with our sort of area are kind of obligated to show teaching approaches that might be better, but everything that people are in those roles are kind of, you know, given is typically just stay out of the way of the subject matter expert and just kind of help them do what they're trying to do, even if it's, you know, perhaps of questionable pedagogical or technical ability, right? Just, am I wrong, Doug? Am I wrong, Doug?
You're not. The number of times I worked with people and it's like, no, I'm the expert, so I know. And it's like, whoa, you're the expert in that topic, but this is an education area. And I am an expert. I am an expert. I am not the expert. And so I've having those conversations across multiple institutions has been, it's a struggle sometimes.
Well, or, you know, particularly when a lot of, you know, the administrative and managerial component doesn't necessarily buy into it either, too. That's something else, right? Like, it's really just, you know, we got these FTEs, you know, we get government funding based on these FTEs, and we'll be goddamned if we're not, you know, anything from a high enrollment standpoint, you know, to boost the supplement from the government seems to be the thing here in Canada. Just from my very limited cursory experience, right? But that's definitely that's more than definitely something for a different time, Doug, because that's just getting
absolutely
right.
So part of the Littlejohn Littlejohn and McGill article was talking about the ecologies of open resources, because I just want to come back to open resources again, because so much of it is free. Because part of what happened with the abundance that computers and digital stuff has impacted is the scarcity has gone away, right? Like if you want to buy a book, well, okay, that book's $400, but if it's free online, I don't need the paper and cardboard on my shelf. And so when we've got that, and then we've got the mess of, okay, the rest of my life is open and abundant because on my phone, I can get any information you can possibly imagine, but I can't do that when I'm a student or when I'm teaching. Like what? So it becomes, how do we make lifelong learners out of them? How do we bring those skills across their entire lives? And that's a lot of what Littlejohn and McGill were getting to, where it's talking about, it's a different context. Is it formal education? Is it workplace learning? Is it interest-based learning? Is it who knows what, right? With all those different areas, you're going to bring your same skills. So why don't we have some established pedagogies that help the students get there in this new world where information isn't necessarily scarce.
A post-knowledge economy. A
Oh, I like
post-knowledge.
that.
I mean, honestly, though, it's like we've gone from like in the Victorian kind of era, industrial, which is sort of where 19th century thereabouts, which is kind of where we kind of are in terms of our classroom model still, right? Where the bring them into the schoolhouse and have the person at the front of the room and give them the summer breaks off to help, with the farming and whatnot. So, and then it's like, okay, so then post-industrial, where we offshore all of these heavy manufacturing jobs, and a service-based economy, effectively, right? That's more or less in Canada, service and natural resources are pretty much the two things, right? If you can get in on
Yeah.
either of those or any of the spin-offs, then fine. So again, service and natural resource do not equate to an economy of knowledge at all as such,
No.
right? Because they just kind of rely on processes and information and knowledge that are just going to help perpetuate more of themselves because it's based on a model of economic and resource-based scarcity. I mean, that's the oil sands in a nutshell, right? It's like high oil prices and gas prices are supposedly bad because people are using less fuel. But on the other hand, the market value of those sands is that they are a finite, limited resource. So again, not to heap score onto the oil sands or use them as kind of a whipping post for this kind of model, but it just seems to me that so then what? Well, like in terms of actionable knowledge, in terms of building a citizenry or cultivating habits of mind where people are actually critical and engaged, perhaps even politically engaged. How do we, use the abundance of technology, the affordance of ubiquitous information and networks to propagate and share that information? How do we teach people to recognize propaganda? So all of these questions, right, come to the forefront here with. So you've opened up the floodgates here with this topic, dude. That's what I'm like. I think we have things we can kind of come back to here.
I sure hope so, because we've talked about a bunch of positives that technology has impacted, and some of the negatives, because when you open up Pandora's jar, right, like the stuff comes out, you can't stuff it back in. So how do we deal with it? And that's exactly how it could be a positive or it could be a negative. Like some people just don't want to deal with certain things for whatever reason.
It's like the Chinese proverb, "May you live in interesting times," right? Like, like, yeah, right, okay. There's two aspects of this, and they're both equally portentous, if you will. So. Okay, man.
So along those lines, I have a question
oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, along that, because I was looking at the pictures, but you've got a new computer, but you've got an old computer too, right?
That's true.
So how organized is your stuff? Like, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but
how organized is which stuff in specific? I guess
your digital clutter. What would be your level of digital clutter? Like, are you a hoarder that collects everything you see that interests you?
No.
Or how do you consume?
Okay. So I mean, I'm a idiot for my 5 or 6 apps that I just check throughout the day. The social ones and the dating ones. I'll say. Not Twitter. Done with Twitter. So I just kind of do my check-ins on those I don't know, like as much as anybody who uses them kind of a lot. But in terms of like, just like, oh, in terms of like stuff I want to just keep, in terms of stuff I want to grab and stuff, the only function for me that that has is when I'm doing something for either this podcast or the music podcast or one of the three blogs that I sort of surreptitiously add to. And it's sort of a function of my own obsessive tendencies and my own neuroses that I have to have a wider context for that collection, because otherwise, if I don't, then my attention would turn elsewhere. It needs to have a larger context to be meaningful. So for me, like in like a learning situation or a job that I may have had, having a wider sense of what you're doing and why it's important and how is important. To have engagement and, shall we say, optimal results. So there, I kind of did a very roundabout but yet indirect answer to your thing there, dude. So thanks for the question.
No worries, because that leads me to the first picture, because we're both teachers, right? We're both in the classroom. We've done the teaching.
Yeah.
And if you go into, like, I was mostly an elementary school teacher.
Okay.
And so I had all the packages. It's like, oh yeah, here's what I'm going to do in September. Here's the book kits. And
I was dating a K-12 educator for a few months last year, and I came and met her at her classroom after, and I saw like those baskets with the resources in them, and I'm just like, man, if only my career had kind of gone a different way, but I just headed straight into post-secondary, stuff after I got my BEd. So, man, that's dope. And I like the curation that goes into that, in a way, right? Yeah. Picking your resources.
I keep everything. Like, I'm a digital pack rat, and every once in a while I'll get stressed out and something will happen. So like, I have like a Gmail account that I never use for anything but the 15 gigs of storage. And I just literally grabbed a whole pile of stuff and just dumped it there because one of my hard drives was about to die and I needed something. And it was just, that's too much. So it's great that I have all this stuff, but if I can't access it, what's the point?
Okay.
So how?
Yeah. I'm just going to tell you, man, we still have the quote unquote sandbox that's associated with this podcast. So I think I can't think of a better way to add content to that than to like open a portal, for instance, with a Google Drive, embed or something, or a link, Doug's funhouse of randomly collected stuff. And then you could have like a curated sort of set of subfolders, but not too much. So this is like where I think replicating the functions of an LMS on a WordPress site could be, just something to do with that sandbox, right? Just some things to think
Very
about, right?
cool.
It's just sitting there with like the turkeys on it from Thanksgiving, and I'm like, I want to, I keep, so this past, as a way of steering towards the end, we're still going to talk about the rest of your pictures.
Oh yeah.
But just in terms of, the recent refurbishment and whatnot of the website, I'm just going to say that I still got to go in and just verify with each of these podcast carriers that in fact it's coming across. I think it is. I have no reason to doubt. So then once that, hour-long task, which I'll give myself, is completed, then I actually do want to start, mobilizing a little bit of time towards the sandbox. So we gotta start envisioning how we can do that. So just a mental note, mainly for me, in the minutes here, as it were. So
first, I'm going to say congratulations again, because I went to Spotify and I'd never been to Spotify before.
Yeah.
I just refused. I went and I listened and I didn't watch, because all the other times when we've been proofing the stuff, I've watched it and listened.
Yeah.
And just listening completely changed some of my thoughts. And it's like, oh, we might want to do this, or we could do that instead. And so I got a bunch of those ideas we can
I'm
talk about some
so
other time.
interested. I'm so glad you did that, and I'm so interested to hear what that involves. And I think I put it, in the show notes at one point, recently. It's like, as you like, now that there's going to be, more emphasis perhaps on the audio than on the video format. Now that we've got our platform and our channels and such more or less established, and we got kind of the website looking, better and some things like that. Now we can sort of hone in on the actual content of what we do here a bit more, right? So no, that's awesome, man. So thank you for that, for sure. So we got a few more of these awesome illustrations, including one for Star Trek.
Yeah, I was just
well played, sir. I mean, that's
it's who was the back like in the 1940s and 50s, that Americana artist, right? That like the next one is, no person who can read has ever successfully cleaned out an attic. Right? And that's
Woody Guthrie. This machine kills fascists. That guy with the guitar.
Oh, okay.
No,
That could be it.
I'm just asking. I'm asking. I'm like, if Americana
no, it's
guy.
a name that, yeah, but it's in the picture. It's just that the old guy reading whatever.
Okay. Yes.
And that's one of the downsides.
Rockwell.
Rockwell. I couldn't remember Rockwell's name. Oh,
yeah,
I'd be
Norman
embarrassed
Rockwell.
if it mattered.
I literally, I have my computer monitor propped up here. I got a hardcover Sex Pistols book, and then I got the Norman Rockwell Treasury, and then I got a collection of things about Pope Francis. So they're propping up my monitor. So yeah, Rockwell, he's okay.
Yeah,
and when you said artist, I was thinking America. I just think musical artist.
You're such a music guy.
I'm aware there are other art. I'm aware there are other art forms, but I'm not fully convinced. That's all.
Oh no, for sure.
Okay,
but I picked that picture because it was such an example of so much. Like, there's abundance, and there's the problem with abundance. Like, whatever the job is, these two were trying to do, they can't do it because all this stuff is so interesting. And so they had to change what their priority was for the day. And that happens in education all the time.
Well, it's true.
Okay, we didn't get to that.
I kind of like the notion here of, just somebody like, it's just like, I was going to do something, but now my path is different. And I'm such a, a literature nerd. I'm such a, I don't know. I'm such a geek for this stuff. I see the dude sitting there and just like, I can smell those old National Geographics, man. Like, that's just like, like my grandparents, used to have them, and I'm just like, they had a subscription, and for 15 or 20 years or something, and visiting them, I just go down to the basement where they kept them and just start flipping them open at random. It was, I get what's going on there for sure, man. So thanks for
my mom would collect Saltscape magazines.
Ah, yeah, decent.
So it was the same with me, right? I'd get home and I'd flip through dozens of those.
Because just kind of at happenstance, right? You're not reading them per se. You just like, oh, here's a cool, image to go with this here, and then maybe you start to read just a fragment of it or whatever, and then it's the physical, the olfactory, the feeling of those pages on your fingers. I mean, that's just to me like, where they got the high gloss on and the ink. I mean, I don't know, man. That's formative stuff for me in the emergence of whatever I am now, right? So man, that's awesome.
The last one is the Star Trek one, where it's thank you for teaching me the word plethora. It means a lot.
It means a lot.
Oh,
I was just sitting there going, yeah,
I posted something like that on Facebook about 10 years ago, but it was people say I'm condescending. That means I talk down to you. And the
Well,
responses I got from just that little twist. And we were
I'm
talking about
ta-
butlers in abundance. So
I'm 6'6", man. So I'm talking down to most people just by nature of being me. And that's something else too, man. You're talking about
yeah.
things that like kind of rattle off in the office, and I'm just like, I mean, like when I see somebody who's like, 6'6" or taller or something, I'm like, this is what it's like to encounter me, right? Like, oh man, you're friggin' tall. Whereas I'm just like used to seeing all y'all as just being like short, right?
Oh,
But it's like when but people in comments have been like, yeah, he's a really big guy, and his body language, like, I'm just like, I'm sorry, it's like I forget how small all you are, right? So I gotta like, it's been a thing in my life where I gotta like use my body language purposefully and unintimidatingly because I'm friggin' 6'6" and 230 pounds, right? So
yeah.
anywho, completely digressed off the topic there in any
That's okay.
conceivable way, man. Um,
That's okay. We're
I'm, I'm, I'm,
basic.
I'm,
I
I'm,
think we wrapped around.
I'm blaming the post holiday brain. I'm just gonna leave it there. Okay, well, no, man. I want to say, Doug, thanks for bringing up this topic. I think not only have we kind of addressed it before and done so more here, I think if we were to look at the transcript of this, if there were such a thing, we'd have like a whole series of things to follow up on.
And if you want, I
yeah.
have found a free transcript maker. I can send you that link if you want, where
I'd
you
be
can dump
interested.
your video in and it pulls the audio out.
I'd be interested to know if it had a high level of accuracy. That would be dope. Because like a little trick, and this is completely like we're into extra minutes now. I'll just in terms of like an automatic transcription thing. When I did my doctoral study, one thing I did was actually just as a cheap and dirty way of getting a written transcript is I took audio files, MP3s of my recordings with my interviews and focus groups, uploaded it to YouTube, put it on an unpublished video, just completely unpublished, and then just generated the transcript and then just kind of cleaned it up as I listened to the recording, as opposed to sending it out to a service where money would have had to be spent or whatnot. Like, okay,
and it would have been a lot of money.
It would have been a lot of time, but anyway, it seemed to work, and I'd do it again. But back in the day, and by that I mean about 5-6 years ago, the accuracy was enough of an annoyance to be like. So if this thing that you are going to send me a link to, yeah, we can. That'd be good. Okay.
Now, this little extra time thing. I don't know if you ever listened to In Our Time from the BBC, and they grab experts and they talk about all these different topics, and they grab like 3 profs from wherever to talk about one topic, and it's a radio show. And then there's always this little bit that says, and listeners of the podcast now get some extra time or bonus time with Melvin and his guests. And then they say, it's literally, that's way more unstructured, and it becomes, what didn't we mention that you wanted to mention? And then people would just throw out well, it would have been great to talk about this or that or the other thing. Anyway,
ENT,
I just enjoyed that. That just felt nice. It just felt
ENT in extra time is what we got there. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take it. Well, man, again, thanks for the awesome topic. Thanks to everybody who's listening or viewing.
Thank you very much.
Whether you're checking it out for the first time or whether you're one of the few who we can surmise have checked it out more than once. In any event, and I think you're going to say something to the effect of that we do want some engagement within the comments and such. Yeah.
And that was, I have a question for the podcast listeners. with our topic about abundance, has abundance helped or hindered you as you've learned? Right? Like, can you give us a story? Can you just tell us about a time where abundance helped so much, or abundance just stopped you in your tracks because of whatever? Right? Just a couple of lines, that would be brilliant. Just
Right.
so we
Yeah.
can
If you wanted to just put those into the comments on the WordPress site or on the YouTube video, or I suppose whatever commenting capacity may be available through some of these services that we are now on, which I totally have to look into in a little bit more detail. So awesome stuff there, Doug. And the question and I believe the word of the podcast will also be included in Doug's section of the notes, which will be coming at you within the next 12 to 14 hours, I would guess, depending on how much we get done in terms of production and staying up late and whatnot. So, okay. Well, again, thanks to everybody. Always a pleasure. Thanks for checking it out. We appreciate it a lot. And bye for now. You were muted, Doug. You were muted.
I was just saying, have a great time.
There we go. We needed to hear that. Okay, good stuff. Catch you later.